Welcome to Chaos Divided, a podcast exploring the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle Snurgle and BlushingNoiseMarine, and today we're talking about how to keep a positive mindset and get the most out of a new edition of 40k. To get us started, I kind of liked the quote thing, so it is life that matters, and what I have learned is that chaos is life, for life is change and destruction in new forms, new mutations ever manifesting, which is from the Dawn of War games. So I thought that was a fitting start.
Beautiful. Couldn't say it better.
So I thought with 10th edition coming, talking about a changing game, I think is helpful. I think a lot of people joined the hobby in 9th edition, and this is maybe the first edition change for a lot of people. And you know, I can see it, you know, in anything, social media, anyone like on Discord, you know, there's kind of the like,
everybody
I don't
knows
have to change.
Everyone knows 10th is coming.
And yeah, I think we wanted to kind of talk about getting excited about it and talk about how 40k is a living, breathing game and not just like a set of rules that are never going to change. So, and I really like, I haven't gone through this. I wasn't here for 8th edition, so I'm kind of excited to have this level. No, I came back for 9th. So I'm excited for kind of this index system, everyone on kind of a level playing field, you know, maybe except Space Marines, but anyways. But I'm kind of excited to see how that goes. But you were here for 8th. So what does that feel?
I was in the tail end of 8th, so I didn't experience the indexes.
Okay.
Because I think the demons were one of the last books in 8th edition, and that's when I got in. But I have heard nothing but good things about the index time during 8th. But that was also, they were coming from 7th, which was chaos, and then going into 8th, which was just like vanilla. You're going from every ice cream scoop to just a vanilla scoop.
Which I think in 2 editions, 9th really had already gotten to the like all you can eat. I think we'd gotten past the all you can eat ice cream bar and we just got into the food fight. Like it was like everything is thrown at the wall. Like
yeah, chocolate sauce, waffle cones, just like everything. And people are getting hurt.
Which, you know what? One thing I do find interesting though, now that we're seeing more of the shape of 10th, you can see how they were kind of proto-testing 10th. Like if you go look at like demons and Chaos Space Marines
or World Eaters.
World Eaters very plainly is like 10th. But even Chaos Space Marines, each legion is kind of in these 6 stratagem. They have their own relics and their own warlord traits.
Yeah. And in comparison to Death Guard when they came out, if you look at the strats, you're like, what, 3 pages? And you're like, okay, I'm going to use maybe 3 of these during my game. But I have to remember 30 of them because some of them are interactive.
Well, and Tau was the same thing. Like, it was just, you know, you're constantly like, okay, this one specific situation might someday possibly, like, there's a strat in the Tau Codex I've used in 1 game. Because it is so specific that you would never use it in any other game.
Did it feel good using it?
It was kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie. It's the there's like an ion laser stratagem. So in your next command phase, it like shoots a laser through and everything takes damage. So I used it to unplump like a back end in a game where he was just like sitting in the back just shooting at me. So it was like very specific, but it's like if this stratagem wasn't in the game, nothing would have been lost.
Okay, right.
So. And I feel
did you remember the name of it? You're like, or did you like, oh, there's that strat?
Yeah, it was the like, it's the laser space thing. Let me figure it out. And that's honestly, I think what a lot of 9th edition had gotten to was like these niche interactions where you're like, I think I might have something. And you're getting into games where somebody's like rifling through a codex, trying to remember this one obscure thing because they think they can do something. So like, indexes sound really nice, especially like a nice breather, I think, to get back to some kind of like vanilla.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's time to clean up the food fight.
Yeah. Let's start from scratch.
And I think that's really, you know, I think what we're trying to talk about today is really like having that positive attitude because like there's so much that's out there to get excited about. And like, you know, we're right in the middle of like all of these announcements and new things coming out. Warhammer Fest just happened. Like the reveals are kind of like surrounded us, so it's kind of like pure excitement. And I think really like the big thing is to kind of like just stay positive about it. Like, you know, if you're seeing like a little snippet and it's kind of like, oh, well, that doesn't seem as good as what it is now. Like, you don't know what the whole thing looks like. You gotta,
yeah,
you gotta give it a chance.
And we were just discussing, like, we ourselves have seen the edition change, and we've seen what people have kind of said or like whispered about, and this is just to help those who are new at this, like what to really expect or what you can. It's not all doom and gloom. Like, I think that's what we're used to, but that there is the excitement and we can rile the people up around here.
And I think it really, like, what makes 40K unique is that it is this, like, living game. Like, you know, every game of chess you're ever going to play has the same rules.
Yep.
But 40K goes beyond that, and new editions create a new way to even play your army. Really, you're not going about things the same way. And I've got it written in here and about the Fish of Fury, because I want to take us all on a little history lesson.
Yes, let's go. Yeah, because we were saying, like, what is that? I've never heard of it. And I was like, oh, tell me more.
So the Fish of Fury was, in 4th edition, a strategy for Tau. And in 4th edition, there was basically line of sight shooting phases where you couldn't shoot units behind other units. So, like, you could basically hide your whole back line. Like, that was a whole guard strategy in 4th edition, which you just have like waves of guardsmen and you couldn't shoot at the tanks behind them. Like, it was a whole, like, there was ways of like obscuring and covering things.
Whoa,
so, like,
so what you're saying is my plague bearers could have protected my Great Unclean One?
Yeah.
My Nurglings could have protected my Great Unclean One.
I think we're maybe dating myself here, and I'm sure someone will leave us a comment that
demons?
I'm getting this wrong. There was demons back then. Okay. Demons were like a half-baked faction, though, that's for sure. I think 5th is actually when they started building out that in 40K, because it was like, hey, we have these fantasy models, maybe someone might want to play them. Like, they were, like, they came in actually like fantasy packaging. Like, there wasn't, 40K wasn't attached to them at all. You just could play them. Okay. So this whole interaction with the shooting phase, so you could run Devilfish, the Tau transport. You would put them sideways, like front to front, so you would block off a whole bunch of the board, and you would unload your Fire Warriors at one end, and because they were skimmers, you could shoot your Fire Warriors out at whatever they needed to shoot at. And if they didn't have anti-tank weapons on the other side, this is back when, like, we had armor facing, so, like, Devilfish were fairly tough. They were actually one of the tougher transports. So, like, a bolter wasn't going to shoot through a Devilfish. And back then charging the Devilfish also wasn't going to make sense. So you'd have to actually, like, run around them to get to the Fire Warriors. Meanwhile, the Fire Warriors are just shooting at you and everything behind them. So, but with 5th edition, we went to the more modern shooting phase where you can shoot past units.
Okay.
So it, like, completely shut down that whole strategy. So the whole point of this is editions can also change the interaction, and they change the way your army functions. Tau in 4th edition were like a gun line army. They were not super mobile. You would, like, have a fire base and you might have some crisis suits. And then 5th edition, which never got a Tau codex, so you're working on a 4th edition codex the whole edition, and you had to completely kind of relearn the codex and relearn how your army functioned.
Yeah, I feel that, especially with, I know I keep talking about them, but like the Nurgle demons, like going from the 8th edition to the 9th, completely different playstyle. Like, the reason why I got into Nurgle demons was because of playstyle. I love being like a tar pit. I like to heal. I like to just be resilient. But the new Nurgle demons have, like, none of that. So that was a different playstyle I had to play with. Like, I couldn't just sit on an objective with 9 Nurglings, 18 Nurglings, and just sit there and be resilient. Now, like, not having the feel no pains, not being 5-up, 5-ups, that was detrimental for them.
I think Nurgle in 9th really lost a lot of the flavor. Like, I feel like
but they're getting that back, right? With 10th.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're probably going to see, like, the indexes are probably going to be pretty, like, Chaos Undivided. Like, the Chaos Space Marine reveal just came out. It's going to be a Chaos Undivided kind of structure with, like, all the gods around it. So kind of that more, like, Black Legion detachment. I would imagine demons are probably going to be more of a, like, Be'lakor Undivided build than necessarily like you're going to get Nurgle, you're going to get Slaanesh, like, right off the bat, which is probably a little sad, but
it's all right. Like, lately I've been playing the Undivided Be'lakor Monster Smash, and they're so much fun.
Honestly, it's also a blast to play against. Like, it looks super scary. Yeah, no, last tournament I played against, it was they had a Bloodthirster, a Lord of Change, and Be'lakor, and I thought it was going to be like a slog, and it was probably one of the more fun games. Like, just
awesome.
like, it was a brutal game, but in, like, there was massive swings, like, within the game. Like, it was, you know, a crazy game. And I think, you know, that whole monster, it was just like, I think it was fun for both of us, and that's really what you want out of a game.
Exactly. Yep. Surprise.
And I mean, Bloodthirsters are crazy, but
but they're killable. Like, they're very scary when they can perform. But you know what? Like, the demons are fair where sometimes they don't perform and they're not rolling their 4-ups, and
I didn't kill the Bloodthirster.
Oh, did you ignore him?
I left it. Turn 5, it was still standing there. Abaddon killed Be'lakor and a Lord of Change, but the Bloodthirster just, like, got stuck clearing objectives.
And that's smart. You got to kill that Lord of Change, because turns 3, 4, and 5, he's getting all those spells off. Almost guaranteed getting super smites, and he'll just pick up.
It's honestly, if Abaddon gives you the Khorne strat right now, so you can get a 4-up deny. And that was kind of the only thing holding me on, was the, like, trying to deny some of the worst of those spells, because the Lord of Change really becomes kind of like a wrecking ball near the end.
Was he the named one? Was he Kairos Fateweaver? Do you remember? Did he know all the spells?
I think he did know all the spells.
Yeah, a lot of people are using Kairos because, like, he just knows all the spells, and you're like, mortal wounds, mortal wounds, mortal wounds.
Well, and that's what, it's mortal wounds are, you either seem to have an army that's very good with mortal wounds, or you have an army that's terrible with mortal wounds. And I'm hoping in the new edition that gets a little more balanced out.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting with mortal wounds.
It kind of seems like every army is going to have mortal wounds in some flavor. Like, right now it's very, like, psychic is mortal wounds. But it looks like psychic is not necessarily that in the new edition.
Yeah, can you kind of do you want to kind of dive into, like, the psychic phase, or do you want to save that and we'll talk about that later?
We're talking about a new edition. We can talk about the psychic phase.
What's going on with the psychic phase? Because I'll let everybody know, I'm kind of wanting to go into 10th edition, just like, I want all the rules in front of me and learn it that way. But I have been hearing that psychic phase is gone?
Yeah, so it's kind of getting wrapped up into whatever kind of applicable phase. The Chaos Space Marine just came out, the reveal, and they had Legionaries on there. So Legionaries right now can get a Balefire Tome, which allows them to cast a few spells and become a Psyker. That's now just, basically, it's a gun. It's like a psychic gun. So in the shooting phase, it's better than a bolter.
And, like, I'm guessing there's going to be some spells in the movement phase, which will do, like, movement, teleportation type of spells. That's what I think
the Weird Boy they've shown does some, like, movement stuff in the movement phase. And I can't remember, the Librarian that they've shown off has some, like, perk abilities he does to like the unit he's attached to. But it's not like a roll dice situation for a lot of it. It's just like an ability they have.
So that's kind of tying into what we're talking about, going from one edition where you're used to something to a new one where it's going to be completely different. And I imagine it's going to feel weird for even like Thousand Sun players that after the movement phase, you won't have a psychic phase. You just go straight into shooting.
Well, yeah, and I think, going to have like, from the heavy psychic armies, you're going to go from having kind of this like rehearsed kind of like symphony of psychic to having to figure it out amongst all the other phases.
And I enjoy that. I think I'm really interested to see that play out because yeah, there were some times where there's some psychic phases you're like, oh man, this is gonna hurt hard. It's like a hammer, and if you don't have anything to combat that, it hurts. But like I like the fact that it's gonna be throughout the entire game.
Well, and not all psychic is going to be mortal wounds anymore either. So what they've shown us for some smites is it's like a strength AP damage situation. So it's more like a gun than it is.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be very different. It has like a psychic keyword on it. So there might still be some like feel no pain stuff around it. And we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but like it's going to function more like an attack.
2d6 to see if it goes off?
We don't know yet.
Right, okay.
That's kind of the like... I think the librarian had like 2 smites. There was like a big smite and a little smite. And there was like another keyword on the big smite. So we don't quite know what it's going to look like yet. So there might be some variability, but it's looking like Psychic's going to be a little more like of an attack than necessarily like its own thing.
Exciting.
The Tyranid reveal didn't include any Zoanthrope stuff, so like that would probably be where we would see smite bombs. But yeah, I think Tyranids are going to be Tyranids, Thousand Suns, Grey Knights are probably going to be a very different army next edition.
We're here for it.
I think Thousand Suns has been such a swingy army through 9th that they would probably enjoy maybe some stability.
Yeah.
Tyranids have been a swingy army too, but mostly in the winning direction.
Yeah, you can swing to the loss, but most of them never chose that way. It was Leviathan and Kraken. And
no, and honestly, I think, coming back to kind of getting excited about a new edition, I think the meta gets so baked in so quickly now. Like, I think back to 10 years ago, there wasn't really the like content creation. There wasn't the like YouTube channels talking about like the meta at the same level. White Dwarf was still like a reliable source for strategy back then. Yeah, weird times before YouTube. So I mean, the meta didn't quite bake in as fast, but like, nowadays, like what you were saying before we got started, like if you want to be really competitive, you've got to be up to date week by week.
Yep. The things that I was saying was that I've heard from many people that they can't play because they just can't keep up. Like we have our everyday lives, we have our jobs, we have children and sick cats that I'm looking after. No, I'm just kidding. But and it's tough for someone to have to go onto the forums and check the FAQs and check the newest Auspex tactics video just to keep up with the rules, because nobody wants to go to a tournament and then find out, no, all of that is not true. So it was tough for the admin of this game for this edition, and with the simplicity of 10th coming, I think that's going to put a lot of ease onto people. I think it might actually, like you were saying, especially with COVID, we saw an influx of people in 9th and playing it and trying it and loving. Like I loved 9th. Like when it first came out, I loved it. Like it was great. And now we're going into a new edition. You're going to see the new people come in, and possibly more of the older players that loved 8th and love the simplicity and just want to have a quick pickup game without having to check all the resources just to keep up of what this game is now, like you said, it's almost a living organism in itself, and we just kept feeding it. It's like a hive mind. Like we just kept feeding it. It was just a biomass, and it just got too big for the masses.
I think that's a good way of putting it, that it got too big, because it's really, what goes into building a list now is like, if you're not using an app, like if you were to use a pen and paper to build a list, you've got to check multiple documents. You got to check like the points changes, like your codex
or Arcs of Omen, and
even like your codex is basically like toast within like a few weeks usually of getting published. If you're Votan, then it got toasted before it even got published. It got pre-toasted.
Pre-toasty.
Which is, and I know Eldar players that were pretty bitter about how fast like most of their codex got torched. Like it was, they bought a picture book for the most part.
Yeah.
So I think that some of the changes they're making, the data sheets, that more like centralized repository for a lot of the rules, that sounds really good. I think that will make a huge difference for people.
For sure.
So moving to kind of one of the points that I've noticed kind of playing different editions is that the editions tend to rhyme and they often repeat. So a lot of the things we've seen so far have actually been elements from older editions. Like when I saw the Land Raider reveal, and it had the assault ramp rule, which Land Raiders had for many editions, I was stoked because like Land Raiders are going to be Land Raiders again. So if you haven't,
do you mind telling us folks that that don't understand?
I was going to get there. Okay. No, so the assault
what is an
ramp,
assault ramp?
So the front of a Land Raider, how it's kind of got the mouth.
Yes.
So in older editions, so older editions used to only be able to disembark out of like doors.
Oh.
Yeah. So like Land
so not
Raider
like the
has
corner of a tank.
Like the back, like you don't evaporate through the back of a Land Raider, for example. Like
I have shock Pikachu face right now.
No, you used to have to be within a distance of the doors. So like if you look at a Rhino has the door at the back and then the two on the side. So you couldn't put models in the front of a Rhino when they came out.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's so thematic.
Right? And so like the shaping of vehicles used to matter a lot. So it's nice to see that the assault ramp is at least getting some like rule love, even though it's not really applicable. But yeah, the Land Raider is the only transport that has a door on the front.
Okay. Oh.
So like you used to be able to put your models in the front and then actually charge them out. So like Land Raiders were a way to get like turn 1 charges in previous editions.
So say for example like the Rhinos, could you not just drive them backwards so that the door was in the front?
So they had armor facing, so the back armor was the worst armor on them. Okay. So you could reverse them back, but then you would go from like an armor 13 to an armor 10, and a meltagun is strength 8, so like it would just get blown up. Yeah. So no, that's why Land Raiders were like, they were bricks. Like they were hard to blow up. Playing Tau, like the reason I have so many like Hammerheads is because I used to play a lot of Space Marine players that had Land Raiders. Because railguns were the only thing that could even semi-reliably pop them.
I see. That's why, during 9th, I would hear the name Land Raider and that they missed the Land Raider. And whenever they saw Land Raider on the table, they go, "Oh, it's a Land Raider!" Now I see why they're
I just bought one and I'm so stoked to use it more because, like, they're such a quintessential, like, Warhammer vehicle. Like, the new Primaris Space Marine vehicles are, like, hover and whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, a Land Raider is, like, it's a brick. It's literally like a large brick. It's I think 4 inches wide. Like it's stupid to like even move around.
I would even say
board.
A little bit more. Yeah, like we painted one for deck box, and it's giant.
It's a fun model. It's it's a feels good model because it just like it feels so quintessentially like Space Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Chaos versions are obviously just covered in spikes and skulls, so that feels
And
even
they're
better.
cooler, of course.
I may have defaced a corn symbol to put on my treads so that I drive over corn's face every time. That felt good for me.
Yeah, leave your mark.
Right?
Yeah.
So no, I think that harkens back to kind of that, like, the more you play it, the more the game kind of like almost like reinvents itself amongst itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like, you know, if you're sitting there only playing 9th and you're kind of like really worried about, okay, I don't know what my army's going to look like, it's probably going to feel very similar. It's not going to be like dramatically different.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to like probably rhyme with how you play it now. It might not be exactly the same, but they're not going to just turn around and be like, you know what, Thousand Sons are now a shooting army.
Yeah. They don't like spells. They actually like despise spells.
Right.
No.
Right. Magnus has Forsworn sorcery, and he actually worships corn now. That's
yeah. Nurgle went sexy. Just bring sexy back.
Are you saying Nurgle isn't? Look at
Some
Great
do.
Queen one is, you know, that's a whole lot of loving.
Hey, I like my thick bitches.
So no, I think, like, you know, not getting too worried about like having to relearn your army from scratch is probably a key like thing to keep in mind, because you're not going to have to. Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to feel similar. Even, you know, what they've shown so far is really like, it's minor, you know?
Yeah. And to kind of go with that is that you may not feel like it's like your army, but everyone else is going to feel the exact same way. Like they're learning an entirely new army, and they're just going to have to kind of feel for it again.
And I think that's really like a lot of fun. You know, your pickup games are going to feel a lot more kind of, I don't know, that kind of like having a game at the kitchen table kind of thing, because it's going to be a little slower at first, and it's going to feel maybe...
It's going to be clunky. It's going to be... Yeah.
And I think, you know, you're not going to be sitting beside somebody like having to know exactly how your army works from day one.
Yeah, and there's not going to be pressure, because everyone's going to feel the same way, that like, you know what, I understand, like, we're all learning it together, and I definitely see a lot of people helping each other out as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, you know, there's people that have multiple armies, they're going to be starting from scratch, and if you've got somebody who does know your army a little bit, like, I think they're going to be more likely than not helpful, rather than saying like, oh, you don't know how that works. That's very silly. Like, they're going to be, oh, actually, that's how that goes.
And it, like, with the simplicity that we were talking about, I'm kind of hoping that Games Workshop is going where you can just pick up these games where, you can set up your kitchen table and just simply play for 3 hours, and keeping it just that simple. So you don't have to have every tab on your computer open to show your FAQ so you can remember.
Which is, and for some armies like that, it's cumbersome. And I think that's one of the things they've said, is that they'll actually be changing the data sheets. Like, if they need to rebalance the game, which something as big as Warhammer, they're not going to get right the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, not having to have a separate document. Like, they can go in and say, okay, you know what, this rule doesn't work on this unit, so we've updated the data sheet on that. I think if they do it well, it's going to be 1,000 times easier.
Yes. Yep.
Because there's just even little things that, like, you know, if you read it in your codex and you didn't realize that it was, you know, FAQ'd, or you didn't understand the ruling in the rule book versus...
Or the grammar of it.
It's true. Like, you know, and honestly, when it comes to grammar, I think sometimes the players are the worst ones. People complain about the way Games Workshop writes rules. But if you remember to the Arcs of Omen, like Abaddon and Silent King, people were finding like half sentence like rules in one page of a codex to be like, oh, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So like, I feel for Games Workshop sometimes in the way they have to write things, because people will jump on anything, I think.
Wasn't that also with Angron, like the first World Eaters FAQ? It was just like to answer a question that was putting warlord traits. You couldn't choose a warlord trait for a named character. And I guess they were trying to put that on Angron, but like, again, trying to stretch the rules, bend to your will.
But then, I think Angron says he can take a certain warlord trait,
right? Because of the wording,
Yeah. So it's these little the people who write the rules for Games Workshop are not lawyers, and I think they almost have to put that very proofreader hat on, and they're going to make mistakes. So I think hopefully a less bloated game will lead to less of those kind of arguments.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, one of the most exciting parts of a new edition is new models. Have you looked at any of the new models? I know you're avoiding it.
It's hard to avoid, especially on Instagram. But I have seen the Tyranid models. I'm more geared up for the Tyranid models. Like, I've seen a couple of the Space Marines and the Librarian and the Dreadnought, but yeah, I'm really excited for the Tyranids at least. I'm interested to see if there will be new demon models. Like, we didn't get a single new model for 9th, so I'm interested to see if there will be new models. I would like to see them bring more AOS models into 10th. Like, you don't have to make a new sculpt, you can just add a couple characters from there. So
there's some beautiful Sigmar demon.
Don't get me started.
Like Nurgle especially, some of the Sigmar stuff is gorgeous.
I would say the Slaanesh.
Oh well, Slaanesh is always gorgeous, but no, it's like the Demonettes are a rough model at this point. And Sigmar has some the Bliss Barbs look way more there's a lot of better Sigmar Slaanesh stuff for sure. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, 10th is an Emperor's Children release.
Yes. So Fulgrim.
I would love Fulgrim. I want to see my snaky boy Fulgrim in all of his glory and just making everyone mad with his perfection.
Yeah.
But no, the new Tyranids, I can't even think of the big brain one.
Yes.
That one is like an eldritch horror. That one's very well done.
Yeah.
And even some of the smaller ones, they've really improved, I think, the concept of Tyranids. They don't look as buggy anymore. They look far more alien, which I think is really nice.
Yes. Yeah.
And new Space Marines are always new Space Marines. It's hard to get excited. Yes, the new Terminator looks better than the old Terminator. It looks like a Terminator. Yeah. It's not as exciting as giant angry brain.
Right? That's a completely new silhouette and sculpt and everything. Whereas
I mean, hopefully you get your hands on some of the new Tyranid stuff, because I would imagine you could do some cool things. I saw your 8-bound.
Yep, they're coming along.
And I know those are in deck box colors, but I was amazed at how well they work. It
was my first time doing grim dark armor like that, and it was my first time doing oil washes, so it really made the effect come to life.
So if you haven't seen those on Nurgle Snurgle's Instagram, you should take a look, because they are gorgeous. And I know they're branded for different colors, but you still manage to kind of give them that classic World Eaters armor, which I feel like a lot of people have tried to do, but I think you did a really good job on it.
Oh, thank you. Coming from a fellow Chaos player, I appreciate that.
I mean, Khorne is the worst of the gods, but
don't say that too loud. Bloodgod might hear you.
Well, we'll have to get him on here at some point and get talking lore. But no, I've Emperor's Children get the same type of treatment, and some of that more a demon, possessed type thing, like the 8-bound. I think that would be gorgeous. And if some new demons, I think, could be, especially with what they've done with some of the bigger stuff, like the Keeper of Secrets needs a refresh for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just some
Well,
there's some room for improvement in some of those models.
I can't remember what their name is, but the winged Keeper of Secrets from AOS, just add those into, and give Keeper of Secrets fly and like the fly keyword, and like those are sexy models right there. Like, bring those on.
They are. No, and that's like, yeah, if they brought even some of the Sigmar stuff, I think that would, you have the models, just write rules for them.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll get them in the index. Maybe we'll get them right from day one, just like,
oh,
boom.
yeah. They're going to be like, we heard you loud and clear. We stopped the press. And that was a great idea.
We're like, we never thought about it. We were like, oh, never occurred to us. We could still double the models.
You can send my check to Canada.
There we go. No, but I think with any new edition, and one of the more exciting things too, they said, at least for the first year's worth that they've announced, every army is getting a new model.
Oh,
at least
okay.
one. So there should be at least some new models coming up for armies that, like, I don't know if AdMech have gotten a new model since they were launched. Like, so there's things to be excited about for everyone, I think, is the message there. We've been talking about being positive, and I think we've kind of been touching on it, but, you know, everyone's going to talk about kind of the reveals for their army and speculate. And I think, you know, the important thing is to make sure that speculation doesn't turn into like nitpicking or negativity. You know, if you're not getting a codex in that first year release, I feel like that's
right.
You know, you might be sitting there kind of disappointed, but you're still going to have basically brand new rules to learn in a few months. You're going to have a whole new edition to explore how those rules interact. And just because you don't have a new codex, that doesn't mean, you know, we don't know what they also have planned. They might release new detachments along the way. Like, we don't know their plan. So, I mean, there's all kinds of new stuff to learn. You know I'm going to be losing Emperor's Children with the index. That's already been made that was made clear today. You know, we were talking earlier, demons are probably going to get a Chaos Undivided, but probably not a mono god detachment. And I think that's okay. Like, you're still going to get to explore the new edition, and it's going to be all kinds of things to get excited about. And I think it's important to have that, you know, if you want to speculate and theorycraft, I think that's cool, but just don't let it get you down.
Right. I wouldn't doubt that it may be a way for GW for them to really hone in on the game system itself without having all these bloated rules and without having all this like fluff. They probably want to have a new system that works, and by having it simple and just this rollout of of codexes coming, it's going to help them as well. Like, we also have to understand, like, they do listen to our voices, and there's thousands of voices that they listen to, and because you can see it through the FAQs, like, things get changed because of the voices out there. So they're probably only wanting to hear the voices of how this game works, how the phases are, and like, does this work? Are the mechanics there? And I think that's what they're going for. At least that's what I hope.
Well, and I think getting the fundamentals right is more important than having every flavor right.
Yeah, it's building a house. You don't start with the windows, you start with the foundation.
And I was just thinking, like, Bashtor came with an Army of Renown. So that might have been kind of their test of releasing a detachment type thing.
Yeah, onto something.
In kind of not a codex. And I mean, World Eaters came with kind of that 2 Army of Renown system. So, you know, I think they're experimenting with having the ability to maybe kind of bring these detachments in and out as well.
And have that like recycle every 6 months?
Yeah, like you might be able to have kind of like a detachment, like a selection of detachments. Like maybe that'll be what 11th does. Like maybe they're kind of just experimenting with what that system looks like. Like I think they forecast what they're going to do more than I think we give them credit for. Like I think they experiment.
That's their business,
yeah,
that's their business model.
You know, like I said with some of the more recent codexes, like I think those were kind of the testing ground for 10th, and as those kind of worked their way through, I think they were able to say, okay, you know what, this works. And you can have these kind of detachment-y sub-factions. And yeah, I think Vashtor might have been an example of them. Okay, what happens if we kind of throw these rules out in the wild? And, you know.
And like I said, like the masses will speak and they're listening. As much as people think that they're not listening, they have to soak up all of like what people are saying.
They're listening in a plural sense. They're not necessarily listening to your exact desires.
Exactly. And they're not responding. Well, they respond in the rules, but they're not going to directly respond to you.
Yeah, it usually has to be pretty big. I think I know this from playing Everest Children because it's a fight first, fight last army. There's a whole designer's commentary on that because it was so badly understood.
I still don't understand. Like it's, I get it, but I get why people don't. So.
Well, they're getting rid of the fights last part at least, so you don't have to figure. Yeah, it's I think it was a way for them. There used to be like initiative orders in fighting, which is again another one of those like too complicated things. The game is so much more streamlined now. So I think they were trying to come up with a simplified version of that, but then it's just like the way those rules interacted, and for most armies they didn't interact with them, so people didn't learn them. Like unless you're playing like Emperor's Children had it, the Silent King has a rule. Yeah. Tau actually weirdly had a fight last rule. And like I think Blood Angels have, so like there was a few armies that would interact, but like Emperor's Children was one of the only ones that like lived in it. So you have this one sub faction of a codex that like lives in an obscure rule, and yeah, you spend a lot of time explaining it.
Did you have a script like before your game? You'd be like, okay, so this is what the rule does, and this is what's going to happen. And I know it doesn't sound like correct, but I have gone through many rules and researched, and this is how it works.
Yeah, the every time you step up to a table, it's the so my whole army has fights first.
That's how you started. So we will be
alternating in your charge phase, and I will always fight first in my turn. I'm sorry.
And try to tell a new person that, and they're probably just like, say what now?
They're like, oh, but I thought I fought first in my charge. But like, you get one. You get to pick the first one.
I've had the exact same response.
Don't charge my Terminators and then not attack them. Like that's so yeah, there was so I'm hoping 10th cuts down on some of those like really obscure stuff that people just don't play with. And I think, you know, this is for a 10 to 20 minute podcast, we're getting closer to an hour. I think the last big point is also we still have a couple month and a half of 9th. If you're enjoying it, if you've enjoyed kind of the point you've gotten to, play some games while you still can. Like, go pick up some games, get out there, and, you know, just because a new thing is coming, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the thing that you've loved for the last 3 years.
Yeah. And even when the thing does come, no one's stopping anyone to continue playing 9th.
That, you know what, from experience, that happens for a little bit, but over time, people kind of get used to the new edition. Yeah. So that's why I will say, like, enjoy it while you can, because people will eventually kind of move on, and it gets harder and harder. Like, you know, unless you want to try a game of 5th edition Warhammer someday, but
of course, I would love. Like, I started with 7th. I didn't like it, but now that I've played Warhammer for a while, I think I would want to go back and just kind of like relive 7th and why I didn't like it.
it's a, you know what, it's a whole different game, and that was really coming into ninth. How killy the game was shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited about 10th being a little bit more of an endurance kind of, survivable game.
Mm-hmm. Make that story, that narrative, and the reason why we come to the table.
Yeah, like I think, in this edition, like, I've played games where I've shot with Tau an entire 10 block of Death Shroud Terminators off the table in one turn.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't feel like the lore should feel.
Okay.
That shouldn't be possible. And, earlier editions, vehicles were tougher, and it was harder to get wounds off. Like, a Space Marine was a little more resilient than they are now. Like, just a regular Space Marine. And I think going back to some of that, cutting down on some of the AP is going to bring a little more of that feel, and it gets a little more, like, tactical. Because you can't just, like, look sideways at something
there's
and
a rhino
obliterate.
that's going to blow up.
Yeah. Like, okay, they've got 3 rhinos full of Khorne Berserkers. I'm going to blow them all up turn 1. Yeah. So now it's going to spend 3 turns Khorne Berserkers running towards me. I think having a little bit more survivability is going to make sure that you're not going to get tabled turn 1, and you're going to get to actually play the game.
Yeah, and that's why I played Nurgle, and that's why I kept with Nurgle, is because it kept me resilient on the table, so I was able to roll dice and get the recycled phases and rules and learn. Like, staying on the table, you learn more than getting tabled turn 1.
And it feels like you can always kind of have more of an impact, and that's why I keep talking about these new rules, and you say you don't want to talk about them, but
no, I'm fine.
the new Gambit rule looks really cool.
That's like the 30 victory points if you're in the quarters. I know I said I'm waiting for the rules. I'm waiting for, like, all the rules, but I have heard the snippets. But yes, I have heard of that.
I think a more survivable game, and then an ability to swing the game a little bit in the end, even if it's just a chance. I think if you're in a game with someone who's like, like a competitive player that, is really kind of like outclassing your skill, maybe it still doesn't mean you can't play the game. There's still always kind of that chance that you can kind of pull it out. Like, I can think of, like, games I've played where I've been completely outclassed, and if you had a little bit more on the table and there's even an off chance, you might be able to still pull a victory out, and I think that'll feel better.
That's gonna be fun.
So no, I'm excited. And I think, are you excited?
I'm so excited. Yeah.
So excited.
Are we gonna have like a 9th edition funeral and then a 10th edition birthday?
We could. Do we want to do a funeral for 9th edition when 10th kicks off?
Da, da, da.
We could do the vitamin C song and think about all of our good times we spent together.
Oh my god, that was my graduation song.
That was everybody's graduation song.
We had to sing it in front of our parents. It was so embarrassing.
That sounds like that sounds like the vibe. I mean, we could have a funeral for 9th. Because I think it's been a fun edition, and I think that's really all you can ask for is like the game, the hobby that you love, being fun and engaging.
For sure, we're gonna be probably talking in the next couple of years. Oh, remember 9th edition and this crazy thing and that crazy thing and how it was. I think we're gonna reminisce about this edition.
I just reminisce about 4th edition,
exactly.
And that was 15 years ago. So I think the more you stay in the hobby, the more you remember. I know some people locally. I've been playing since like 1st edition, and they've reminisced about like 1st and 2nd and some of the crazy stuff that used to be out there. So I mean, that's also part of evolving with the game, is you can also reminisce and talk to folks about. Maybe when it wasn't as clean and polished, and, Warhammer used to be a little wacky.
Wacky Warhammer.
Do you know about the orc paint colors?
The paint colors?
Yeah, so orcs,
Like if it's purple, it's sneaky. If it's red, it goes fast. Or
yeah, those actually used to be rules.
oh
So if you painted a
no,
thing red, it went faster. Like it
that's
moved further on the table.
hilarious.
Yeah, yellow is more DACA. But yeah, the red, all orc vehicles used to be painted red because they went faster. So there was no point in painting it any other color.
That is wacky.
So yeah, Warhammer used to be less clean.
Mhm.
It was not the system it is today.
Right.
So no, and I think, like I said about assault rams, like we're kind of seeing flavors of that come back where, you know, models can have kind of their own thing going on, which I think Ninth didn't have as much of. It was more about faction rules and stratagem interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I think 10th we're gonna have a little bit more of that like individual model flavor, which I'm
Right.
really excited about.
And aren't there going to be rules for terrain as you can destroy them?
I don't know if it's destroyable, but there's definitely more rules around terrain.
Maybe.
Maybe I missed something. I don't know. I don't keep
thought
up
I
with
heard
everything
that.
either. I know there's like height is going to matter more.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're higher up and you shoot down, you get like bonus AP. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there might be destructible terrain. I don't know. Knights will be blowing up everything. They'll just
Well,
like
I'm going to
stomp through
manifest
it.
It's out there in the universe, so.
I mean, I would love to see a Great and Clean one just like smash through a wall and like
Kool-Aid Man it
carve
through.
through it. Right? Oh yeah! Just smash their way through like some guardsmen who thought they were safe.
Who doesn't want that?
Right? GW, if you're listening to our second episode, Kool-Aid Man, Great and Clean ones. If it's the only
ability.
We want Nurgle to be tough, and we want Great Unclean Ones to Kool-Aid Man it through walls.
Yeah.
There we go. That would be so much fun.
Fixed. Army fixed.
That would just FAQ it now. 4 weeks of 9th, Great Unclean Ones can Kool-Aid Man it through a wall.
Oh my god, yes.
And it destroys the terrain in the process. Just like, boom, gone.
It's rubble. It's just difficult ground.
Honestly, Nurgle would feel better. I feel like you could play Nurgle Mono God just for that. Just 3 Great Unclean Ones, just smash it through terrain.
Yep. Because I can't tell you how hard it is to move those things now. Like, you have to go around the corner. Like, what Great Unclean One is going to be so gentle of just going around the corner of buildings? No, he's going to smash.
I'm picturing like a very dainty Great Unclean One, just like...
I can't touch the train. Oh.
Pinky's up on his bell. He's like, oh, pardon me.
Corner.
No, Kool-Aid Man through, break it, wall's gone, terrain's gone.
It's manifesting.
Oops. That would be fun. So, all right. Well, I think we have some great ideas for chat. They haven't released any demon reveals, so if it happens,
right? They're waiting for our rules. Yeah. They're waiting for this take.
This is what they've been wanting the whole time.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, while you're waiting for 10th and even into 10th, I think the big thing is to be patient, be kind, and have some great games.
100%.
In the meantime, I want to thank you for joining us. Don't forget you can subscribe to Chaos Divided, and you can find us on social media at Nurgle_Snurgle and at BlushingNoiseMarine. I have 4 followers at this point. I'm moving up in the world.
Yeah. How about we just get you to 5 and you stay at 5 because that is Slanesh's number.
6 is the holy number.
Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. I take that back. I'm very tired.
What's Nurgle's the holy number? 14? Like
7. It's a multiple of 7, so you're close.
I accidentally got closer than I wanted to be. There we go. 2 more followers. Good. Shut it down.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.